SD card, so let's hope I can get through Office Space, one of the best movies ever made, recommended by Pepperoni Tony, who watched this the other day and reminded me to do a reading on it in the comments. This is another one of those movies like Tropic Thunder where if you haven't seen it, turn this off and turn that movie on. It's a classic, too many quotable lines to name. And hey man, come on, if you wanna be with it, if you wanna be part of the cult as we'll talk about in here, go ahead and watch Office Space. Office Space is a 1999 American satirical black comedy film written and directed by Mike Judge. It satirizes the work life of a typical mid to late 1990s software company, focusing on a handful of individuals weary of their jobs. It stars Ron Livingston, Jennifer Aniston, Gary Cole, Stephen Root, David Herman, AJ Naidoo, and Dietrich Bader. Office Space was filmed in Dallas and Austin, Texas. It is based on Judge's Milton cartoon series and was his first foray into live-action filmmaking and his second full-length motion picture release following Beavis and Butthead Do America, which I should also probably read about. I saw Beavis and Butthead Do America at Universal City Walk when it came out. I really gotta go back to City Walk. I miss that place. His 2009 film Extract, also saw it, is also set in an office and was meant to be a companion piece to Office Space. The film's sympathetic depiction of ordinary information technology workers garnered a cult following within that field, but it also addresses themes familiar to white-collar employees and the workforce in general. It was a box office disappointment, making $12.2 million against a $10 million production budget, but after repeated airings on Comedy Central, it sold well on home video and has become a cult film. Several aspects of the film have become internet memes. A scene where the three main characters systematically destroy a dysfunctional printer has been widely parodied. Swingline introduced a red stapler to its product line after the Milton character used one painted that color in the film. That's right. Plot. Peter Gibbons is a frustrated and unmotivated programmer who works at Initech. He is friends with coworkers Samir. I've never read Samir's last name. Here we go. It's in the movie Nagi Nanajar, and Michael Bolton, who loathes being associated with the famous singer of the same name. Why should I change it? He's the one who sucks. Such a good movie. Another co-worker in the office is Milton Wadhams, a meek collator. Oh my god, he was a collator who is mostly ignored by the rest of the office. The staff suffer under top-heavy, callous management, especially from Initech's vice president, Bill Lumberg, whom Peter hates and avoids confronting. Peter's girlfriend, Anne, persuades him to attend Dr. Swanson's hypnotherapy session. While hypnotizing Peter, Swanson dies of a heart attack before snapping Peter out of his relaxed state. Peter sleeps soundly through most of the next day, ignoring phone calls from Lumberg and Anne, who angrily breaks up with him while confirming his suspicions that she has been cheating on him. Peter begins dating Joanna, a restaurant waitress who shares his loathing of management. She is required to wear pieces of flair, buttons meant to allow employees to express themselves. Her boss often hassles her for not wearing more than the required minimum. I'm not sure why it's not saying who the actors are portraying them this time around. Usually Wikipedia does that, so just to recap so you can have a face with the names. Ron Livingston plays Peter Gibbons, and Gary Cole, if you know who that is, plays Lumberg in a legendary role. If you ever hear one of your friends joking, saying, "I'm gonna need you to come in Saturday," they're quoting Lumberg. And, hey, Peter, what's happening? A lot of famous stuff from Lumberg. And Jennifer Aniston plays Joanna. It's fascinating. They're just leaving these names out. Anyway, meanwhile, a pair of business consultants, Bob Slidell and Bob Porter, the Bobs, are brought in to help the company downsize. Peter finally shows up at work and casually disregards office protocol, violating the dress code and messily removing a cubicle wall blocking his view out the window. Impressed by his frank insights into Initech's problems, the Bobs promote him despite Lumbergh's misgivings. Michael and Samir, however, are fired. Milton is also expected to be eliminated, but it is learned that he was laid off 5 years previously, but neither Milton nor the accounting department were notified. To avoid confrontation, the Bobs and Lundberg tell accounting to cease Milton's salary payments without telling him he has been terminated. Milton is subject to further mistreatment, including the confiscation of his beloved red swingline stapler and the constant moving of his desk, ultimately into the basement. Tired of being mistreated, Peter, Michael, and Samir decide to take revenge by infecting Initech's accounting system with a computer virus designed by Michael to divert fractions of pennies into a bank account. Such transactions are small enough to avoid detection, but will result in the accrual of I'm butchering this. Such transactions are small enough to avoid detection, but will result in the accrual of a substantial amount of money over time. There. Peter successfully installs the virus, and on Michael and Samir's last day, he steals a frequently malfunctioning printer, which the three proceed to destroy in a grass field. At a weekend party, Peter hears rumors from a coworker that Joanna had slept with Lumbergh in the past. When Joanna confirms this, a heated exchange leads to them breaking up. Frustrated with her own job, Joanna gives her boss the finger in front of customers and quits in response to another lecture about her lack of flair. On Monday, Peter discovers that a bug in Michael's code has caused the virus to steal over $300,000 during the weekend, which is very conspicuous and guarantees they will be caught. The trio try to devise a plan to launder the money to no avail. After Michael and Samir blame him for their predicament, Peter decides to accept full responsibility for the crime. He writes a confession and slips it under Lumbergh's office door after hours, along with traveler's checks for the stolen money. Peter then learns that the Lumbergh Joanna slept with was an ex-coworker unrelated to Bill Lumbergh. He meets Joanna, who has started a new job at another restaurant. He apologizes to her, and they reconcile. The next morning, Peter drives to Initech expecting to be arrested, but discovers that the building is on fire, which destroys all evidence of the scheme. He sees Milton fleeing the scene, apparently having made good on repeated threats to burn down the building after being mistreated. Samir and Michael begin new jobs at Initech's rival Initrode, while Peter's neighbor Lawrence helps him find a new job. Lawrence is Dietrich Bader, by the way. Helps him find a new job as a construction worker, an occupation which he enjoys. Milton, having stolen the traveler's checks while searching for his stapler in Lumbergh's office, uses the money to vacation in Mexico, where he threatens to put strychnine in the resort's guacamole after being neglected by the staff. So listen, it's fascinating. This is the first time, after reading, 6 or 7 plots in other videos scattered throughout the channel, this is the first time I feel like the plot oddly did not do the film justice. You still need to see it. In fact, I hope you didn't even listen to this without seeing it. I'm finding now, I realize a lot of the movie it really gets its funniness, if you will, because of the acting itself, the inflections, for example, the god-awful atmosphere you have to be subjected to in certain restaurants, regarding when Jennifer Aniston, Aniston's character Joanna, has to deal with all the repeated bullshit from her boss saying you're not wearing enough flair, and he's just this happy, bubbly guy in a restaurant setting, and you're just like, dude, off. She does a great job. The actors do a great job, and all of just the overall motifs and the themes and the feeling of being in an office environment is pretty much perfectly caricaturized realized and reflected in this. If you are in tech, well, not necessarily in tech, they made it a good point of saying a 90s tech firm, but if you're in like your basic office environment, I would say engineering, definitely. If you're in engineering, if you're not teleworking and you're in tech, if you're in finance, if you're in any office environment whatsoever, you gotta see this movie. You're gonna laugh your fucking ass off. Let's talk about production really quick. Development. Office Space originated in the series of 4 animated Milton short films that Judge created about an office worker by that name. They first aired on Liquid Television and Night A Liquid Television. I think I brought up Aeon Flux. It was either in this one or in the Reddit. Anyway, I should read about Liquid Television, but first I gotta prep you guys by showing you a bunch of clips at some point, I'm sure. It was an early cartoon, how do I put it? Various vignettes, various cartoons played in one show. And it's funny because Beavis and Butthead also aired on Liquid Television, I believe. And Milton also, so clearly Mike Judge was in good with the Liquid Television people. I digress, sorry. Office Space originated in this series of 4 animated Milton short films that Judge created about an office worker by that name. They first aired on Liquid Television and Night After Night with Alan Havey, and later aired on Saturday Night Live. The inspiration came from a temp job which he had that involved alphabetizing purchase orders. That's hell. And another job as an engineer for 3 months in the San Francisco Bay Area during the 1980s. There you go, just in the heart of the Silicon Valley. And in the middle of that overachiever yuppie thing. It was just awful. That was him being quoted as saying that. Peter Chemin, head of 20th Century Fox, where Judge had a deal, wanted to make a film out of the Milton character inspired by a former co-worker of Judge's in Silicon Valley who had threatened to quit if the company moved his desk again. You don't want to know what he does at home after work, Judge replied. Instead, he suggested an ensemble cast-based film. Someone at the studio responded with car wash, but just set in an office. Milton was not the only character inspired by someone from Judge's past. During his jobs in Silicon Valley, where he barely made enough to afford his rent, he had a neighbor who was an auto mechanic. Not only did the man make more money, he had flexible work hours and seemed to Judge to be much more content with his life and work than he himself was. That's fascinating. The neighbor inspired Lawrence, Peter's neighbor in the film, and is such a good character. You meet him early in the film also. The setting of the film, he'll be memorable. One of the more memorable characters, actually. They're all memorable. What am I talking? See this goddamn movie, please. The setting of the film reflects a prevailing trend that Judge observed in the United States. It seems like every city now has these identical office parks with identical adjoining chain restaurants, he said in an interview. There were a lot of people who wanted me to set this movie in Wall Street, or like the movie Brazil, but I wanted it very unglamorous, the kind of bleak work situation like I was in. Judge wrote a treatment in 1996 and the script after the first season of King of the Hill. Fox president Tom Rothman was happy with the draft as he was looking for lighter material to balance the event movies like Titanic that dominated the studio's output at the time. He considers it the most brilliant workplace satire I'd ever read. Despite that, Judge hated the ending and wished he could have completely rewritten the third act. Okay. Casting. David Herman was the only actor Judge had in mind for a specific part, Michael Bolton. Herman had been trying to leave his 7-year contract at Mad TV, but the show would not let him. So, at its next table reading, he managed to get himself fired by screaming all his lines. That's great. So to be clear, the guy that played Michael Bolton was fired from Mad TV purposefully because at the table reading, he screamed all of his lines. That's hilarious. Greg Daniels said they could always find a place for him on King of the Hill, where he had been doing some voice work soon after he read Judge's Office Space script and was delighted with it. At the first read-through of the script, Judge was pleased with Herman's performance and felt Stephen Root improved on his own take on Milton, but was not happy with the rest of the cast. He considered abandoning the film, but Rothman said it worked and just needed the right actors. According to Judge, while Fox at hunting, he was advised to get the film stars Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Again, he almost changed his mind about the film. Rothman said in 2019 that while A-list stars are often unlikely to take roles in low-budget productions, those films should nevertheless make the effort to attract them. He had agreed to meet with Damon in New York, but then Ron Livingston's agent asked if his client could audition for the lead. Casting director Nancy Klopper was impressed, and after Judge saw the video, he told the studio that he wanted Livingston in the part. You know what's really funny about that? I would absolutely see Matt Damon killing that role, right? And I'm sure those of you that have seen Office Space, couldn't you see that? I mean, Damon's so fucking good in everything he does, but I could absolutely see him in that role and completely selling it. Yeah, Damon does whatever he wants. Damon could act as Peter that in the way that Ron Livingston played him if he wanted to also, you know. Anyway, Jennifer Aniston was cast to accommodate. Livingston is the shit. He created the iconic character, so I'm not taking anything away from him, just saying. Jennifer Aniston was cast to accommodate Fox's desire to have a recognizable star in the film. Although they were concerned that her part was so small, the subplot involving her battle with her boss over her flair was added as a result, and she was written out of the sex dream sequence, along with dialogue indicating she actually had slept with Lumberg. However, she had liked the script since she was not getting many other films like that at that point, and she had gone to the same high school as Herman. Kate Hudson also read for the part. After casting the Indian-American A.J. Naidu as Samir, who had originally been written as Iranian, the character was rewritten to be Jordanian, and Naidu worked with a dialect coach to get the accent right. John C. McGinley auditioned for Lumberg, but was ultimately cast as Slidell. Judge says that after Gary Cole read for Lumberg, there was no doubt as to who would play him. He made the character 10 times funnier. A casting search in Texas yielded Greg Pitts for Drew, but no one could play the Tchotchke's manager, so Judge took that role himself. I don't even remember that. The Tchotchkes. Principal photography. Judge made the transition from animation to live action with the help of Tim Scherstad, the film's director of photography, who taught him about lenses and where to put the camera. Judge says, "I had a great crew, and it's good going into it, not pretending you're an expert." Principal photography began in Texas in May 98, I should say. Several issues arose during filming. By the third day of shooting, temperatures had risen over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and smoke from fires in Mexico was filling the sky over Austin, making it white. Scherstad says that forced the postponement of the opening traffic jam scene until it cleared. Man, every scene in that movie is iconic. The traffic jam scene, it's still while the credits are going. Sorry, I'm so mumble-mouthed tonight. Studio executives who saw the dailies were not happy with the footage that Judge was getting. Judge quoted studio executives as stating, more energy, we gotta reshoot it. You're failing. They also asked for Livingston to smile more. Oh my god. But at that point, only the early scenes had been filmed. Judge told the studio that happier scenes would come later. Livingston says he heard they believed he was on drugs and were considering firing him. My god. In addition, Fox did not like the gangsta rap music used in the film. Rothman told him he had to take it out, and Judge said after production he would do so if the next focus group also disliked it. A young man in that focus group said the fact that the characters worked in an office but listened to gangsta rap was one of the things he liked about the movie, and Rothman relented. The scene where Peter, Michael, and Samir take their office printer out into a field and batter it to pieces was inspired by Judge's experience with his own printer while writing Beavis and Butthead to America. He told his co-writer Joe Stillman that he was so frustrated by it. When he was done with the script, he planned to take it out into a field and destroy it while videotaping the process. Scherstad says the whole sequence was largely improvised, but Naidu adds that they were trying to do it in a way that evoked how the mafia would do it to someone it wanted to studios in New York who told them they were huge fans of the film and the scene was authentic. McGinley says the film contains many improvised moments. It was like jazz on that set. One example he recalled was when Paul Wilson as Bob Porter cannot pronounce Samir's last name. Naga. Well, Naga don't work here anymore anyway. Sorry. Naidu, for his part, improvised the breakdancing, which he did with local friends after shooting his scenes during the day. The improvisation also helped solve some problems with the script. Originally, Bolton was to refer to the singer he shared his name with as a no-singing asshole. However, Herman recalled it was decided that the film could not say that since it would imply he did not sing his own songs, so he came up with no talent ass clown. The production design. Judge was very exacting in his demands for how the Initech set looked good on him. He said regularly that it had to seem oppressive. The production went as far as screen testing different types of gray cubicles. Judge also wanted the cubicles to be tall so that Lumbergh would have to lean in to be seen from Peter's desk. Considerable effort was also expended to making sure the TPS reports looked realistic. The glasses Root wore to play Milton had lenses so thick that he had to wear contact lenses to see through them, I'll bet. Even so, he still had no depth perception. He had to practice reaching for the stapler and as a result grateful it had been painted red. Swingline provided the stapler after the filmmakers could not get permission to use either the Boston or Bostitch brands from their manufacturer. Just gotta check out how much is left because there's limited time on the camera. Oh, I better get it in gear. Here we go. Let's see, maybe speed read it. Alright, release. Forgive me, I'm gonna try to go quick so we can finish this before the SD card runs out. Marketing. Judge hated the one-sheet poster that the studio created for Office Space, which depicted an office worker completely covered in post-it notes. He said, people were like, what is this? A big bird? A mummy? A beekeeper? And the tagline, work sucks. It looked like an Office Depot ad. I just hated it. I hated the trailers too, and the TV ads especially. McGinley too felt it looked like Big Bird from the children's series Sesame Street, and that he would not go to see such a film. For the home release, Judge was upset that the same image was used, albeit with Milton peeking over the man from behind. The studio also had a man living in a plexiglass cube above Times Square for 5 days. Livingston, when he visited the cube for press events, found that most reporters preferred to talk to the man in the cube and not him. He was not surprised, as tracking for the movie was not good and there was a foregone conclusion that it wasn't going to open well. Producer Michael Rotenberg elaborated that it took a few research screenings to realize that audiences often have issues with satire. Another problem that Rothman later conceded was that they could not put Aniston on the poster due to her small role. Later he admitted that the marketing campaign did not work and said, Office Space isn't like American Pie. It doesn't have the kind of jokes you put into a 15-second television spot of somebody getting hit on the head with a frying pan. It's sly, and let me tell you, sly is hard to sell. Yeah, I can see that. And Aniston's role was very, very small. It was shocking. I believe it was after Friends, right? I was surprised it was as small a role as it was. Even though it was main, you would think she would be like the lead, right? Not like kind of co-star. Alright, box office. Office Space was released on February 19th, 1999 in 1,740 theaters, grossing $4.2 million on its opening weekend. That was 8th overall and 2nd for new releases after October's Sky. Herman said he was elated after seeing the film in Los Angeles and hearing it had made $7 million, until friends more familiar with the movie business told him that was a poor performance. Serstad saw it later in Burbank, and the theater was almost full. He assured Judge that word of mouth would slowly increase the audience. However, in early March, Fox pulled it from 3/4 of the screens it had been on after it barely made $1 million that weekend. The movie's grosses continued to decline precipitously, and after the end of March, when it pulled in less than $40,000 from 75 screens, it was pulled from release altogether. According to Judge, a studio executive blamed the movie exclusively for the failure, telling them, "Nobody wants to see your little movie about ordinary people and their boring little lives." It went on to make $10.8 million in North America. The international release brought an additional $2 million. On home release, $8 million in DVD, Blu-ray disc, and VHS sales were sold at release as of April 2006. Critical reception. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 80% based on 102 reviews and an average rating of 6.84 out of 10. The site's critical consensus reads, "Mike Judge lampoons the office grind with its inspired mix of sharp dialogue and witty one-liners." Metacritic gives the film a weighted average score of 68 out of 100 based on reviews from 31 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore during opening weekend gave the film an average grade of C+ on a scale ranging from A+ to F. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 3 out of 4 stars and wrote that Judge treats his characters a little like cartoon creatures. That works. Nuances of behavior are not necessary because in the cubicle world every personality trait is magnified and the captives stagger forth like grotesques. Sorry, I ruined a beautiful statement. In his review for the San Francisco Chronicle, Nicholas Saul writes, "Livingston is nicely cast as Peter, a young guy whose imagination and capacity for happiness are the very things making him miserable." In USA Today, Susan, not going to read that last name, wrote, "If you ever had a job, you'll be amused by this pan to peons." Everything about that sentence right there is unreadable to me. Here we go. Owen Gleiberman in Entertainment Weekly gave the film a C rating and criticized it for feeling cramped and underimagined. In his review for The Globe and Mail, Rick Groen wrote, "Perhaps his TV background makes him unaccustomed to the demands of a feature-length script. The ending seems almost panicky in its abruptness, or maybe he just succumbs to the lure of the easy yuck. What began as discomfiting, what is that word? Satire soon devolves into silly farce." In his review in the New York Times, Stephen Holden wrote, "It has the loose, jointed feel of a bunch of sketches packed together into a narrative that doesn't gather much momentum." In 2008, Entertainment Weekly named Office Space as one of the 100 best films from 1983 to 2008, ranking it at number 73. That is very specific. Cult status. Disappointed in the film's $12 million domestic gross, Judge decided to move on and began work on what eventually became Extract, a similarly themed follow-up to Office Space. Fox suggested that next time he pay more heed to the studio's casting suggestions. However, he soon learned that the film had not gone unnoticed within the industry. "Jim Carrey invited me to his house. Chris Rock left me the best voicemail ever. I had dinner with Madonna, who found the Michael Bolton character angers sexy," Judge said. 4 years later, Judge was working on the Idiocracy screenplay, another fantastic Mike Judge movie, with Eden Cohen. During a break, the two went to an Austin Starbucks and the baristas were doing impressions of Lumbergh. Cohen asked Judge if they were only doing it because he was present, whereupon the barista turned around and asked the two if they had ever seen the movie. That is fucking hilarious. Other cast members found the film had reached people when strangers began associating them with their characters. Cole said that a year after release, on the service jobs he works when not acting, people began shouting dialogue from the movie at him. Aniston says that even today, when she is eating at a certain type of restaurant, people will ask if she likes their flair. Comedy Central premiered Office Space on August 5th, 2001. That airing drew 1.4 million viewers. By 2003, the channel had broadcast the film another 35 times. These broadcasts helped develop the film's cult following. Livingston credits the regular airings the film received on the Comedy Central cable channel for making Office Space a cult favorite. It felt like it kind of went viral before that concept even existed. Since then, Livingston has been approached by college students and office workers. He said, "I get a lot of people who say, I quit my job because of you. That's kind of a heavy load to carry." Livingston says that people tell him watching Office Space made them feel better, which he still appreciates. The legacy. Office Space has become a cult classic, selling well on home video and DVD. As of 2003, it had sold 2.6 million copies on VHS and DVD. In that same year, it was in the top 20 best-selling Fox DVDs. As of 2006, it had sold over 6 million DVDs in the US alone. 4 years after the film's release, Judge recalled that one of his assistant directors on the film told him they had gone out to eat at TGI Fridays and noticed that the wait staff were no longer wearing buttons on their uniforms. The Flair Joanna quits her job over in the film. That's hilarious. Asked why, the manager told him that after Office Space had come out, customers started making jokes about it, so the chain dropped the requirement from its dress code. "So maybe I made the world a better place," he told Deadline Hollywood in 2014. In 2008, Entertainment Weekly ranked it 5th on its list of 25 great comedies from the past 25 years, despite having originally given the film a poor review. Of course they did. In February 2009, a reunion of many of the cast members took place at the Paramount Theater in Austin to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the film. Rothman said in 2019 that despite his connection to several films that won the Academy Award for Best Picture, he hopes Office Space will be mentioned before them in his obituary. You know what? We're almost done with this, I'll bet. Oh, it's right in the middle. No, it's toward the end. I gotta put in a trivia question somewhere. Oh my gosh, where was I? I forgot where I was. Oh, in his obituary. Give me the name of the very, very famous person that made a cameo as one of the most famous musicians of all time in the movie True Romance. Give it to me, get pinned to the top if you answer correctly. I bet you the movie buffs will know. If Daddy Cheese or Pepperoni Tony get a hold of this, they're probably going to answer right away. Where were we? Office Space spoke to a generation in a way that few movies have, said John Alschuler, who produced Extract, the Judge's later companion piece. Nobody does this kind of material. It's all about the weirdness of real people in real life. In a 2017 profile of Judge, New York Times Magazine writer Willie Staley observed that the film had been compared to Herman Melville's short story Bartleby the Scrivener, in which a lawyer's clerk like Peter shows up at the office one day but declines all work, telling his boss, "I would prefer not to." Staley's own high school English teacher, he recalled, brought up Office Space in class to get students to appreciate how tedious Franz Kafka's work at an insurance company was. It's such a brutal portrayal of workplace misery that its most useful points of comparison date back to when office culture was first unleashed on humanity. Wow. In culture, several elements of the film have become memes reused in other contexts. TPS report has come to connote pointless, mindless paperwork, and an example of literacy practices in the work environment that are meaningless exercises imposed upon employees by an inept and uncaring management, and relentlessly mundane and enervating. Dude, a lot of words in this that I'm unfamiliar with. They're just typos. According to Judge, the abbreviation stood for Test Program Set in the movie. The PC load letter error message has likewise become a stand-in for any confusing, vague message from a computer. The printer scene has been widely parodied, including by one U.S. presidential campaign, and the popularity of Milton's red stapler led the manufacturer to make a real one for sale. The film is credited with coining the now popular slang term ass clown from one of the characters, using it to refer to single Michael Bolton. In 2015, the comedy website Funny or Die put together several videos in which it spliced the actual Michael Bolton over Herman in scenes from the film. Most of them were ones which referenced the confusion coming from the character and the singer having the same name. Bolton performed the scenes exactly as Herman had, with one exception. In his conversation with Samir, he turned to the camera and substituted the words extremely talented to no talent before ass clown. The printer scene. Before the 2009 Austin reunion screening, a printer was destroyed outside the theater, in reference to the scene in the film where Peter, Michael, and Samir destroy the dysfunctional printer on the ladder to two's final day at Initech. That scene has frequently been parodied, often by amateurs, using a similar electronic device in an open space somewhere, emulating the original characters, blocking camera angles and moves, sound effects, and use of slow motion, all set to Ghetto Boys still. The Fox animated series Family Guy did its own parody of the scene in 2008 during the show's 7th season. In I Dream of Jesus, the season's 2nd episode, Brian and Stewie Griffin, tired of Peter constantly playing the Trash Man's Surfin' Bird, steal his 45 RPM single of the song and demolish it in a similar scene. For television, a clean version of Still had to be used. During the campaign for the Republican nomination in the 2016 presidential election, Texas Senator Ted Cruz ran a political advertisement parodying the scene, showing an impersonator of likely Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton and two assistants destroying her personal email server with a baseball bat in an open field. Oh, this is hilarious. And lastly, it's not lastly, almost, I was going to say Red Stapler would be funny to end on. Red Stapler, or Stephen Root, says he realized the movie's impact when people started asking him to sign their staplers. The red swing line stapler featured prominently in the film was not available until April 2002, when the company released it in response to repeated requests by fans of the film. Its appearance in the film was achieved by taking a standard swing line stapler and spray painting it red. Root says when he shows up on sets today, the crew usually has ordered several boxes of red swing line staplers and left them waiting for him. Okay. Video game was based on it, okay. Possible sequels. Shortly after the release of Office Space, Judge, despite his disappointment at the movie's lackluster box office, began writing the script for Extract, which he describes as a companion piece. The studio later asked him to put it aside and work on Idiocracy, which it believed would be more commercial. After that film, like Office Space, failed at the box office but became a cult favorite, Judge returned to Extract, and it was released in 2009. It similarly makes light of workplace dysfunction, but from the perspective of a manager rather than a worker. There's been talk of doing more with Office Space or a show. There's been talk of doing more with Office Space as a show or sequel, but it's never seemed right, Judge said ahead of the film's 20th anniversary. As for the former possibility, he recalled that because of the film, NBC offered him the chance to shape the American version of the British sitcom The Office, wow, which similarly bases its humor and depictions of the absurdity of white-collar work and its effect of those who do it. Among the material the network sent, however, were some reviews, one of which said the series succeeds where movies like Office Space failed. Judge passed on the offer. Very cool. Okay, so that was good. I gotta move on to other stuff. I will say before I kill this reading, the big takeaway from Office Space for me and like many other people is actually the lead, Peter, and it's his approach. What happens after he's hypnotized, it revolves around Peter, and I don't believe this wiki did that great a job. Personally, I don't think it did that great a job in the plot line really hammering that home. And in that, at least, I get to not spoil something for you, because the events that happen to Peter throughout the film are the real meat of it. And that's where it really gets funny, and they actually didn't talk about that, so I won't talk about it either. You just need to see the movie, and then come back and talk with me in the comments. I'll talk with you. I'll talk about that movie. I want to get your opinion on it, especially like nowadays, with so many people, you know, at their job all pissed off and everything. It's just such a great movie. There has to be a spike in popularity on this film, on all of the stats and metrics and analytics out there. Okay, I'm going to record something. I will announce the new gaming channel here in a bit, so you guys can subscribe to that if you want to. It's only going to be clicking, no whispering, no talking or anything like that, no music, no sound effects, only the buttons clicking on the controller, and hours upon hours of various video games. So that's going to be really fun if you guys are into that, and if not, you still have me here whispering. So I will talk to you guys in the comments. Sleep well, keep gaming, do whatever you're doing. Talk to you in a second.